Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. I'm Frater Theurgia, and tonight's video is on the topic of Solomonic magic. So chances are, if you've ever seen a reference to magical talismans in popular culture, or magical seals of any kind, or you have a little bit of knowledge of medieval grimoires and spell books, then chances are you are familiar with at least the Key of Solomon or some of the designs of the talismans that appear in the Key of Solomon. It is a very well-known, very popular form of ceremonial magic. And it's really, you could call it, I suppose, a genre underneath the broader umbrella of Western ceremonial magic. You've got things like Enochian magic, for example, which is a system in and of itself, and then Solomonic magic can be considered together as its own kind of system of ceremonial magic. So tonight I want to talk about what the major texts of Solomonic magic are, the major books of magic which are referred to by that system, and also what these books profess to do. But first, a bit on the origins of Solomonic magic. The name, of course, comes from the legendary King Solomon from the Bible, and the texts of Solomonic magic really emerged during antiquity in the sort of Roman period all the way up to the sort of medieval period. Within that span of time, magical texts which claimed to be related to King Solomon emerged. So basically, King Solomon had a legend surrounding him about the fact that he was not only a great king and a wise leader, but also a very powerful magician. And Solomonic magic pertains to the secrets that Solomon himself had in terms of his spells and the magic that he used. So King Solomon was, of course, a king of ancient Israel who lived about 3,000 years ago, purportedly. He was the son of King David. And while King David was a very kind of heroic leader and fought many battles and won many battles to secure the ancient kingdom of Israel, in contrast, King Solomon was a ruler in a time of peace, and he was much more renowned for his diplomacy and his wise counsel and his ability to make fair and just judgments. But King Solomon's wisdom is said by some to have extended beyond just the wisdom of the world into the wisdom of the other world, into wisdom concerning and knowledge of things of an occult nature. And according to the legend that is associated with Solomon and his magic, Solomon received a ring from the Archangel Michael, which allowed him to command demons to help him to build the first temple, among other stories. And it's kind of interesting. We almost see something which might hint at the legend of Solomon commanding demons when we look at the Bible and we consider the fact that while Solomon early in his reign is said to have clung to worship of the one God of Israel, later he was known to have sort of dabbled in idolatry, as he took wives from different nations and was influenced by their beliefs and customs, the nations surrounding ancient Israel, and he interacted with some of these other gods. And interestingly, if you look at the names of many of the demons of the Goetia in the Lesser Key of Solomon, many of them are named after Near Eastern deities that would have been worshipped at one point in that part of the world. So that's an interesting connection there. However, it is important to note that Solomon in the legend was not worshipping these beings. Rather, he was still invoking the authority of God in order to influence them into doing things for him. And so much of this legend associated with King Solomon the magician can be found in the Testament of Solomon, and that's one of the major works on Solomonic magic. The other two major works, or major books, which really contribute to our understanding of this area of magic are the Greater Key of Solomon and the Lesser Key of Solomon. Both of these are magical grimoires containing conjurations, invocations, prayers, talismans, instructions for creating magical tools, things of that nature. And the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon come from an earlier source book, which was known as the Magical Treatise of Solomon. So the interest in Solomonic magic in the modern period can really be traced to the kind of period of the occult revival in the late 19th, early 20th century, particularly surrounding the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and their activities. And in fact, Samuel MacGregor Mathers, who at one time was the head of the Golden Dawn, translated the Greater Key of Solomon into English. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to go through each of these two keys of Solomon and walk you through the sorts of things that are covered in each of these magical texts. So, starting with the Lesser Key of Solomon, this is a book which is divided into 5 parts. First, the Ars Goetia. Second, the Ars Theurgia Goetia. Thirdly, the Ars Paulina. Fourthly, the Ars Almadel, and fifthly and finally, the Ars Notoria. And I'll explain what each of those means. Beginning with the Goetia. The Goetia is the most well-known and actually the most infamous and arguably dangerous parts of the Lesser Key of Solomon. It gives a method for summoning a series of 72 demons, which the Lesser Key of Solomon says in no uncertain terms are evil in nature. And the number 72 is significant because it's 36 by 2. There have been sources which link the 72 demons of the Goetia to the 36 decans of the zodiac wheel, which are of course threefold subdivisions of each of the 12 signs. And there have been sources linking the 72 demons of the Goetia to the 72 names of the Shem Hamforash as kind of like a dark side to those more godly energies. So it describes these 72 demons and it gives them different ranks, like prince or marquis or duke or king, and it also attributes a different number of legions to each of them depending on how powerful they are. And each of them can do different things for you, which I'm not going to go into because the purpose of this video, so far as the Goetia is concerned, is not for me to encourage you to use it. I've done a video which is very popular now on my thoughts on working with demons, and I just don't think that it's worth the trouble for the reasons I go into in that video. There's just better things you could be doing with your time. So in addition to describing the demons, how they physically appear, well, not physically, but how they appear when they materialize, it gives them each a seal, and it also describes a number of sort of magical charms, you could say, that you construct in order to kind of control the demons or ward them off or keep them at a safe distance. So there's the hexagonal kind of diagram of Solomon, which is all about compelling the demons. And then there's also a ring of Solomon, which serves as a protection against them, as does the pentagram of Solomon. So this is an example of what the pentagram of Solomon looks like, if you can see that. And it's going to focus, hopefully. This is just made out of metal. It's just one version of what it can look like. And there's also a seal of Solomon that is described in the Goetia that looks like this. The real seal is not meant to be worn like this kind of pendant is. It's actually meant to be a covering for a vessel that is also constructed, sometimes known as the brazen vessel or the bronze vessel. And this secret seal of Solomon seals the brazen vessel, which is used to bind and trap the demons in certain situations. And of course there is instructions for creating a magical circle around the magician as a form of protection from the demons, as well as a triangle outside the circle that the demons are compelled to appear inside of. Another kind of layer of protection. But you know, there's always chinks in the armor and this sort of thing, and there's always a risk when you're playing with negative forces like this. But in terms of the brazen vessel, it looks something like this. This is a version that I prepared earlier, you could say. There are no demons trapped in this particular brazen vessel anymore. But that's sort of what it looks like. You can see the Hebrew names around the edge. These are holy names, holy words and such. And that is the vessel that is described in the Goetia. According to the legend of King Solomon, Solomon did bind all of the demons of the Goetia in this vessel before throwing it into the ocean, with the exception of Belial, who was too powerful, who instead fled and inhabited a statue that Belial was then able to cause to speak like a human being and attract worshippers, which is an interesting story. It sort of has parallels in the story of the image of the beast that is given the power to speak. In the book of Revelation, it bears similarities to the talking statue or the living statue that gave birth to the evil figure of Armalas in Jewish legend. And it sort of encourages one to think of whether there are any sort of imitations of a sentient being made from metal that speak like a human being that we can think of in today's day and age. And if there is such a thing, perhaps we should be wary of it, because it may in fact be inhabited by the spirit of Belial. But that's just a side point, and that's just my own paranoia coming through. And you might notice there's interesting parallels here between the story of Solomon and the story of the genie in the bottle, or the genie in the magic lamp, who is trapped by a wizard and gets released, and upon release offers to grant wishes to the person who has summoned them. So the next book of the Lesser Key is the Ars Theurgia Goetia. This is summoning spirits that are partly good and partly evil. There are a total of 31 spirits, and these are described as aerial spirits, spirits of the air who preside over different points of the compass, which also correspond to different seasons and different classical elements, so fire, water, air or earth. And many of the ritual tools that are used in the Goetia are also used to summon the spirits in the Theurgia Goetia. So much like the Goetia, there's sort of seals for each of these beings, and the spirits under them also have seals in this part of the book. The seals are a bit nicer and more ordered looking than the Goetic seals or sigils. And in terms of what each of these spirits do, they pretty much all do the same thing, which is going to fetch you things, showing you things, revealing the secrets of kings, things like that. Basically, getting you any information or anything that you require or desire. The third book of the Lesser Key of Solomon is the Ars Paulina. This is a book which deals with planetary and zodiacal kind of spirits. The first half of it has to do with angels of the hours of the day. That is 24 angels in total, each for one of the hours of the day on any given day. And much like in other forms of medieval magic, particularly those influenced by Hermeticism of the ancient Greeks, each of the hours of the day is considered to be under the influence of a different planet, and so each of these 24 angels can be invoked for its planetary attributions to fulfill any sort of goal which falls under the kind of jurisdiction of a particular planet. Say Jupiter for wealth, for example, or Mars for activity, or Mercury for knowledge, and so forth. And this book also makes use of a holy table, known as the Table of Practice, which I will show you a reconstruction of. I actually reconstructed this table for my own practice with the Ars Paulina some years ago. It wasn't anything to write home about. It was quite makeshift, but this is sort of what it looks like when it's made. That's a 6-pointed star in the middle, obscured by the kind of scrying crystal in the middle. So this is used for both the first and second half of the Ars Paulina. The second half of the Ars Paulina is very different to the first, though. This is dealing with the angels of the zodiac, and it goes into quite a bit of detail on how you can determine the angel of the zodiac that presides over your birth and can therefore give you insight into your destiny. This is very similar to the methods I've spoken about before from Agrippa's work for finding your personal angel using astrology. It's another method. It basically gives you a table with every degree in every zodiac sign, and then when you're able to determine the exact degree of the rising sign that was on the horizon when you were born, you're able to look to this table and find the name of an angel, and that is your angel that you then invoke to make contact with. And the angels of the hours are given talismans that you can construct. The angel of your birth from the zodiac is given a talisman, and you can construct that from the various different metals of the planets at a particular time that is sacred to that planet to create the talisman. And then you use that together with the table of practice to summon the angel. And of course there's a conjuration to do that as well, as with the previous two books as well. Now there's an interesting note within the Ars Paulina where it's talking about the angel of one's rising sign and the conjuration thereof. And the text actually says that this is the conjuration of the holy guardian angel. So linking the angel that you can uncover for your birth in the Ars Paulina with the holy guardian angel, which of course was a central feature of the teachings of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And I think it's not quite right to conflate the two for much the same reasons as it's not right to conflate the zodiacal angels that Agrippa describes with the holy guardian angel. It might give you some insight into your destiny, your true will to commune with this angel, but it cannot put you in touch with the deepest divine center of your nature, which is the true higher genius of every person and is beyond the influence of any stars or any planets. The next book is the Ars Almadel. This is the book which is for contacting good spirits. And so what this book is about is it's about constructing a kind of wax seal which sits on top of an altar, and that is called the Almadel. And then you light 4 candles, one at each of the 4 cardinal points, and you use this Almadel to commune with angelic beings. The angels are attributed to one of the 4 altitudes, which are in turn divided into smaller parts or domains. And the purpose of summoning these angels is to obtain knowledge and wisdom of various descriptions by communing with them. This particular form of magic, and arguably even the Ars Paulina before it, has a lot of similarities with Enochian magic, including the wax seal and the communing with angels to gain wisdom. And if you look at the design of the Almadel, you can even see similarities with some of the tables and seals that are described as the ritual tools of Enochian magic. That leads us to the 5th and final part of the Lesser Key of Solomon, which is the Ars Notoria, the book of the notary arts. This covers a bunch of prayers and orations, and it actually it actually gives a bunch of prayers and orations, which were apparently given to Solomon by the Archangel Michael. And the purpose of these prayers and orations is to gain certain types of knowledge and certain types of wisdom, and also to help with memory as well. So very much about the obtaining and retaining of knowledge from different arts and sciences. And that is the contents of the Lesser Key of Solomon. The Greater Key of Solomon, in contrast, is, as you can see, quite a bit shorter than the Lesser Key of Solomon. And it deals almost exclusively with one particular form of magic, and that is planetary magic, making use of magical talismans. So the planetary talismans given in the Greater Key of Solomon are quite famous. And there's sort of a number of talismans for each planet. So for the planets Saturn, Jupiter, Mars and the Sun, there are 7 talismans each. For the planets Venus and Mercury, there are 5 talismans each. And for the Moon, there are 6 talismans, for a total of 44 planetary talismans that are described by the Greater Key of Solomon. And the number 44 has numerological significance, significance in gematria, you could say. The number 4 is a number of completion and stability. More so stability, really. A stable system. You think of a kind of a house that has 4 walls, for example, and a fortress that has 4 walls, and 40 is, of course, 4 times 10, so it's like an amplification of that stable energy of the 4. And when you add 40 and 4 together, that's again an amplification and an emphasis of that 4 energy. So it's a very good number for solidifying this magical system and making it a stable system with a lot of integrity. And much as in the Ars Paulina, the function of each of these talismans is very much linked to the energy of that planet and what sort of influence that specific planet has. But the appearance of the different talismans is only one part of it. There's also a lot of information in the Greater Key of Solomon about the preparation of the talismans, the sort of virgin parchment that is needed, the various colours that are needed for that. And it goes into quite a bit of detail on that. There is, of course, a particular hour or time that is sacred to a particular planet when the talisman must be prepared. And similarly, there is a lot of space devoted to the preparation of the magician who is about to construct this talisman. It's not something that you can just create on a whim. There is an intensive period of purifying and consecrating and creating all of the various magical tools specifically for this ritual. There is a period of fasting and ritual purification through that, as well as through abstinence for the 9 days leading up to the magical working. And there is a kind of ritual purification by washing in exorcised water that needs to happen as well. There are specific requirements for the kind of location that you need to work with these talismans in. The Greater Key of Solomon says that you should find a desolate and uninhabited region. So somewhere that's far away from the humdrum of civilized life where no one is going to disturb you. And there's a lot of other cool little spells within the Greater Key of Solomon as well, which are often overlooked, like a spell to become invisible, which apparently Aleister Crowley used with great success when he was a young magician. There's also a ritual for creating holy water, which can be used to consecrate the magical tools for the Solomonic magical work, as well as other sort of things like chasing away phantoms is specifically mentioned as one of the things you can use this holy water for. And that, in a nutshell, is the contents of the Greater Key of Solomon. So taken all together, this has been a very quick crash course in the subject matter of Solomonic magic. It is a fascinating area. It has had a huge influence on our later understanding of, the stereotype of the wizard, of spell books and all of that sort of a thing. And it's really a fascinating read to go through these sorts of texts, to have a look at all of the sort of weird and wonderful diagrams that are in there. Some of the talismans in the Greater Key of Solomon look like some sort of alien technology. They're just so uncanny. So definitely an interesting area to study. And as for whether this is actually from King Solomon himself, well, as I've said, the origins of this form of magic can only really be traced back to Roman antiquity, but it must have come from an older tradition and continued older practices, which, who knows, could have their origin in the time of the First Temple and perhaps even with the figure of Solomon himself. But certainly in the spirit of King Solomon, these sorts of texts were created and very much inspired by the life and work of that enigmatic figure. And if you want me to do more detailed videos on any aspect of anything I've spoken about tonight, I'd be happy to do so if there's interest in me doing that. But that's all for tonight. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe to this channel to support my work, and if you want to give me even further support, hit join or thanks down below. But thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next time.